In today's video, I'm going to talk you through the 5 reasons that I normally wouldn't create a design just like this. If you want to know what those 5 reasons are, then keep watching today's tutorial. So welcome back to today's video. Now I've got some really small garden flowers, really petite, short stem flowers that are really difficult normally to arrange with because you don't get long enough stems to create an impressive or a large design. But I saw a reel on Instagram, and if I get the opportunity, I will link the designer down below, or at least I'll name her in the video below. She did a really pretty arrangement on a very quick reel on Instagram. And she used a method that I wouldn't normally do. Now, I'm a commercial florist. I sell flowers for a living. I provide flowers for weddings, funerals, any type of occasion really. And I've been taught a really rigid set of rules that I have to follow. And the first one being that my floral foam should be securely attached to the container. As a florist, we deliver, we take designs from the studio here to people's homes, to wedding venues. I deliver flowers for corporate events. And it's really vital that the mechanics for a floral design are nice and secure. That design was done as a hobby style flower arrangement, but I really loved the finished design. And I'm going to sort of recreate it, but with my own stamp. And I'm going to use this oval shaped glass vase, which I do have a small amount of water in it. Now, the first issue for me is that she didn't attach her floral foam to the container at all. She literally just sat it on the corner of her container, and I'm going to sit it to what is my left hand side as I'm looking at it. And as I've already explained, that is something that in the floristry world I would never do, because if this was transported maybe as a gift for somebody, there is a chance that that floral foam is going to fall and it's going to land inside the container, or it's going to fall off completely. We could put some clear tape over the front just to secure it in place. I could put a bit of hot glue around the edge of the container, but I decided that I'm going to make it in the same manner as I saw that previous video. I need to bear in mind that I need to cover this area here where you can see the foam. The first pointer that I'm going to discuss, and something that I would very rarely do, is produce a design that doesn't secure the foam to the container. Now, this is really securely wedged in. It also means that you can see the glass vase really clearly, so we're not hiding the beauty of the container. And I think this is quite an interesting vase. And I also feel that I didn't want to do anything too heavy, too styled, too sort of formal in its styling, because I really do want to really be able to see how lovely and interesting that container is. So this would be good if you've got an ornate vase that you've got at home and you want to make a feature of the vase as much of the flowers. Now, as a florist, for me, the flowers are always the more important feature, and the vase or the container not quite so important. So this is going to have equal importance. And I'm going to start initially by placing some flowers quite close to the foam, just really to hide the foam, which is really important, and to give a little bit of depth to the arrangement. Now, I've picked garden flowers. Everything I've got today has been picked from my garden. And one of the difficulties sometimes with material from the garden is that, or in my garden at least, is that it can be quite short stemmed, and you often don't get the length to create any impressive designs. So what I'm going to do initially, and I'm going to reuse that piece of greenery. This is the zinnia, and this is the first year I've grown zinnia in the garden, and they're quite short. I think if I leave them a little bit longer, they are going to become longer, but without cutting them, they're not going to have a second flourish of flowers. So it's a really beautiful flower. I've grown a mixed variety pack. Some of them are a little longer than others. So I'm just picking out the smaller heads, smaller stems first of all, because I'm going to use these quite close to the foam. Now, I don't think there is any different way of creating this arrangement. I don't think you could do it with wire netting because I need to get the flowers in quite tight. but I'm almost going to do a sort of starburst, sunburst coming out from the centre. But my initial job is to try to cover some of that floral foam. Now, I'm not looking for those typical elements and principles of design. It's a bit more playful, a bit more fun to create. And I'm starting mainly with the shorter flowers that I've got. So this is a lovely little sweet pea. It's quite scented. And these have only just started coming in the garden. I've got sweet peas that have been flowering for a good couple of months, but I've successionally planted, so I've got another set come in. There's not a huge length on them, so they're going to look really nice, tucked quite close to the foam. It's going to help cover the foam. And darker colours, if you don't know much about colour theory, darker colours are recessive and they work better towards the centre of an arrangement rather than towards the outside. Now, if we look at this from the front, I've got quite a lot of that floral foam covered, but if we look at it from the side and from the overhead camera, there's a huge amount of floral foam still to be covered. And that is another one of my sort of concerns with this design. My second point is going to be that in this type of arrangement, you're possibly going to need a lot more flowers to cover the back area here, or you're going to have a backup plan. And in my case, the backup plan is the Status Limonium. This hasn't come from my garden. This is one that we had in for weddings a few weeks ago, but it's going to act really nicely to cover the floral foam at the back if I need to, without making it too heavy. And I said if I need to, I'm definitely going to need to, because I don't have enough flowers here to cover the back. Now, I've had a sudden thought. I also need to bring flowers downwards, so I don't want to overfill at this stage, because I need to bring some flowers in this position, coming downwards. So I'm almost creating a bit like a starburst, or a bit like an explosion, almost like sort of fireworks. So what I'm going to do now is go in with a slightly raised level, but this time using a different flower. And I'm going to go with the Chocolate Cosmos. If you're a keen gardener, the Chocolate Cosmos is quite easy to grow. And the reason it's called chocolate is because, oops, a bit tangled up there, is because it has a very subtle smell of chocolate. It's not my favourite perfume, I must say. The freesias are much nicer. But what I'm going to do with the shorter pieces is just expand outwards. Now, I've mentioned several times that I'm aiming this to be a little bit of a starburst, but you could really do this in any particular shape. And I'm hoping that maybe after this, you're inspired to have a little go yourself. And I don't think it matters what time of the year you can recreate this. It would be fantastic in the spring where you have little muscari in the garden, or there are narcissi and daffodils available from the supermarkets and the flower shops. I'm just trying to make it visually symmetric. So I'm creating a sort of round shape, but it's not perfectly balanced on either side. It's a little bit playful and a bit fun to look at. So I've really compacted in the front. There's not a great deal of floral foam visible here in the front. So I'm now starting to extend towards the back. And I can do that with the longer flowers that I've already kept to one side. So I've mentioned that not being able to attach the foam to the container would be one of my main concerns. But my second concern when I saw the video being shown on Instagram was quite often when you push flowers into the floral foam, it forces the water out, and in time it will contaminate the water on the bottom, and you'll get lots of the water dripping from the foam into the water, and the bottom part will be quite unsightly. So to avoid that happening, I've made sure that the floral foam has dried off before I've used it. And then what I'm going to do is top the floral foam, not the floral foam, top the water level up so that it's resting on the bottom of the foam, because that way it'll ensure that the foam stays hydrated. But what might happen now, because I've lifted the water level up so it's touching the foam, you might start to get that really messy look in the water. But you know, I'm here to pass on some knowledge to you and to show you some different methods and some different skills. So if that happens, then we know we can't fill the water until right at the very end. But now with the addition of these much longer pieces of zinnia, you can really hopefully see that starburst or that firework effect taking place. And what I think is really good for this type of arrangement is if you're on a budget and you can maybe only buy one bunch of spray carnations or chrysanthemums from the supermarket, then you'll be able to create a really interesting design. I paused then because I want to remove the greenery, because ideally I don't want any greenery towards the edge, because I only want the greenery used close to the foam so that it's hiding my foam. I don't want to make a feature so much of it. So my concerns I've already mentioned are that the foam isn't attached and that the water level is going to contaminate and look really unsightly. So that's what we're looking out for in today's video. Now then, let's keep going. It's a bit flat. If we look at it from the front, it's a bit flat in this area here. So I started to widen the arrangement, but what I also need to do is to make sure that this center or the lower center part has some longer flowers as well. Otherwise it's going to be really tight in the middle with lots of placements of flowers that don't quite gel with the center. So far from the front, it looks really pretty. The foam is pretty much covered and I've got a really soft and delicate design. But if we look at it from the back or on the side, it is really quite atrocious because you've got that huge piece of floral foam still visible. But I'm going to keep working on it and I'm going to keep adding all these lovely flowers as we go. And you know, if it turns out to be a disaster, then we won't worry so much, because not only have I learned, but you will have learnt as well. So a couple more of the cosmos, just framing that outline. And really what I'm trying to do is create an even distribution of the different colours and all the different flowers without focusing too much on the elements and principles of design. Now, my other concern with this type of arrangement is that because there isn't a dish or a bowl of any description underneath the floral foam, it's going to be really hard to hydrate it. It's going to be difficult to pour water over the top and to keep that foam hydrated. So my best option is to keep that water level really high. So I've really solved two problems in one by keeping the level of the water quite high alongside the floral foam. It's really preventing the foam from drying out completely. Now I have used quite a lot of the chocolate cosmos, so the arrangement is a bit dark and we've lost the sort of zingy nature of the colours. So now I'm going to introduce a brighter, more country sort of flower. This is Tanacetum, or the feverfew. This is sort of related to the chamomile family, and it's going to just lift the colours a little and give it a really pretty, soft and delicate look to it. You need to be quite careful when you're placing the flowers in so that you're not damaging that first layer that we placed in really close to the floral foam. But what I find is if you don't cover the floral foam right at the very beginning, and I use those zinnias cut quite short, if you don't cover it at the very beginning, it's really hard at this stage to try and feed through really delicate soft stem flowers into the centre without damaging some of the flower heads. So let's keep going with a bit of the zinnia. Now, no, it's not zinnia, this is Tanacetum. Now this would also work really well with gyp. Supermarket gyp will be fantastic. Make a little bit of a ball around the floral foam before you start and you're going to get fairly good even coverage. We did this in class this week and one of the ladies used gyp and spray carnations and it worked beautifully without spending a huge amount of money. A little bit on the whimsical side and nothing that's too heavy or too controlled. Now my next flower is the seed head from the Nigella, and I've pulled all the greenery off the bottom, so you've just got that nice round head. The original video that I saw of this design, she'd only used one type of flowers. I think it was a chrysanthemum, a Santini chrysanthemum. But I wanted to use a little mixture of flowers. There are so many pretty flowers in the garden during the summer, and often we overlook them because you don't have the stem length, or we don't think they're going to last so well, particularly flowers like the sweet pea. You don't always think they're going to last very well in the garden. And that really sort of brings me on to my next pointer. What I would worry about as a commercial florist with making this design for somebody is that the perceived value of it is that it looks quite cheap. It doesn't look value for money. Garden flowers are often seen as inexpensive. They're often seen as the sort of cheap version of flowers, and lots of people would prefer to have an expensive looking bunch of roses or some tropical flowers rather than these really lovely flowers that come from the garden. So one of my concerns as a commercial florist would be that this doesn't look like it's worth a lot of money. Whereas really speaking, there's been a lot of time and care and attention made in creating this. And I think this would look fantastic on the top table for a wedding. If the bride is using glassware and candles, the light would reflect beautifully through this glass. And it's not too imposing that it would hide the bride and groom on the top table. And it's going to give a nice summery look to any type of wedding. So far, I don't have any contamination in the water from the floral foam. So my first concern about the water getting dirty hasn't come to fruition. And I've used up all of the main flowers that I wanted to put in the arrangement. So all I'm going to do now is just finish off with a small amount of the statice just fed through the front and a little bit around the back here, just to give it a bit of dimension towards the back. And while I'm doing that, I can talk to you about my fifth concern about creating this arrangement. And that really is the suitability of flowers for this particular design. If you think about a flower shop and the flowers that are generally sold in a studio like I've got here, or a florist shop, they're normally much bigger flower stems and they're quite thick, they're quite chunky. If you think about roses, hydrangeas, they've got a really big thick stem. So I'm thinking that this would be quite difficult to do with the standard flowers that are normally found in a flower shop. As a rule, we don't tend to sell these lightweight flowers because they don't last as well as the bigger chrysanthemums, the carnations, the lilies that you find in a flower shop. So I don't know whether this could be adapted for a large scale design, but it would definitely work so well for the summer months when we have all these lovely flowers available to us from local flower farms and from the garden. Now, everything that I've used today, apart from the statice, has come from my own garden, but this time of the year we use a huge amount of flowers from local flower farms. They're grown. We can buy buckets of mixed flowers, or we can specify the flowers that we want to use in all different types of designs. And I think this arrangement is great for those types of flowers. So if you're lucky enough to have a flower farm near you, then buy yourself a mixed bucket. Or as I mentioned, just pick up something like a spray chrysanthemum or a spray carnation from your supermarket or your local florist shop, and you can really experiment with the shapes and the styles that you do. It doesn't have to be a sunburst or a sort of firework inspired arrangement like I've done here. You can go for any shape at all. Now, I think this is really pretty. I'm not quite sure if you're getting the full impact of it on the camera, because you really need to be close up to it to appreciate all these amazing, beautifully delicate flowers. And in the meantime, I've got to find a way of covering my floral foam on the back, because I've used up all of the statice that I was planning on using to cover my floral foam at the back. So now I'm going to have a little pause to find out what I can use to cover the back. And I've decided that I'm going to use some beech. This is a local beech. This has also come from a local flower farm. And I don't really want to extend the height out, but if you're looking for something a bit more traditional, you can definitely frame the back. So it's okay if you're a hobby-based flower arranger. You can leave the back of the foam visible. It doesn't look particularly attractive if you've got that big green blob visible at the back. Or if you've got some artificial flowers in the house, you can always cover the back with one big bloom. You can use moss as well to cover the back, or you could use a bow, which is a little bit more reminiscent of the 80s and 90s, where we used to use big ribbons to cover the back of the foam. Or do what I've done and gather up some local foliage that is going to work really nicely just to cover the back of the foam and neaten it up and make it look more presentable. Now, I am considering at this stage what the design would look like if I did put more foliage in the back. So what I'm going to do is pause this video here, take photos of the design as it is here, and then I'll add some greenery and I'll show you 2 different photos at the end. So it's an excuse for you to stay to the end of the video, and then you can see how the 2 designs compare to one another. But I hope you've enjoyed that. It's taken me a little bit out of my comfort zone because I was really concerned that that foam wouldn't stay in place and my water was going to look really dirty by the time I finished. But I'm quite pleased that all my garden flowers have been arranged really nicely while still showing off the elegant vase underneath. Thanks as ever for watching. Bye for now.